there is a very high chance the water in your glass is what thirsty dinosaurs drank because of a biogeochemical process that we call the water cycle. You might probably know or at least heard of this cycle, but you must be thinking, what is the use of the water cycle? This cycle is the journey water takes as it moves from the land to the sky and back again. Another question, how does this cycle works?
This is the evaporation, which is when water molecules with the help of the energy of the sun are excited at the surface and to rise up to the air when it becomes cloud in the atmosphere. Second, sublimation, whereas ice or snow directly changes into water without undergoing any of the phases. Third is the condensation, where water vapor is collected, then it becomes tiny droplets of water and ice, turning into much fuller clouds. Next to condensation is precipitation, where atmospheric water is released from the clouds in the form of rain, freezing rain, sleet, snow, or hail. Fifth is the infiltration, where rainwater is absorbed onto a material in the example on the ground, mountains, and rivers. Lastly, the runoff. It is when the excess fluid or liquid flows across the surface of the land and into nearby creeks, streams, or ponds. It can come from both natural processes and human activity.
Speaking of human activities, let's dive deeper into some of the anthropogenic effects of human actions that affect the water cycle. Number 1. The acts of afforestation and deforestation have their own benefits and downfall. One benefit is that the water readily reaches the surface and is not intercepted by vegetation. However, lack of trees means that there is less transpiration, therefore implies less condensation and rainfall. Also, vegetation reduces excess runoff as it absorbs the water, which eventually leaves the drainage basin rather than being stored within the basin.
People are starting to urbanize every part of our living environment due to the growing population of humans. Technically, it means more roads, pavement construction, and buildings. If you must know, building can intercept and store considerable amount of rainwater and lessen water reaching the drainage basin. This leads to less infiltration and high chances of runoff that reduce groundwater and hinders flows respectively. Also, this tangled situation can also lead rivers to be dried out or diverted in order to introduce new settling areas.
Moving on to reservoirs, dams that humans decided to build provide storage enough to initiate evaporation and condensation, then eventually rainfall. Unfortunately, these dams impede the water flow within the drainage basin. Using the floodgates, it can reduce the gushing impact of water downstream. Moreover, wells and boreholes can drain more groundwater, preventing groundwater.
Finally, the most terrible and unacceptable acts of humans that affect the water cycle, industrial activities. This changes a lot, leaving not only the water cycle, but species to be devastated as well.
Now, have you ever thought of an individual suddenly storming in your house and practically changing the whole routine of everyone inside it? Well, invasive species are like that. Aquatic invasive species are animal or plant species that are introduced to a foreign location and begin to reproduce. These may result in economic impacts and foundation disturbance towards the aquatic and terrestrial ecosystem. One example is the green crab, or also known as Carcinus maenas. It is a European crab that is introduced through sailing ships in ballast waters to the coast of North America, Southern South America, Australia, Japan, and South Africa. It is known to be a predator of numerous shore life, including worms and mollusks. This insatiable appetite became a problem to the commercial shellfish industry and also became a problem for shellfish farmers. What a selfish shellfish, right? Another invasive species is the Caulerpa taxifolia, or also known as the killer algae, which looks like an innocent strand of green seaweed. Killer algae are native in Indian and Pacific Ocean. Talking about looks that are deceiving. However, as it wandered under the current waters, it ended up in a public and private aquariums in Australia, California, Japan, and Monaco. As it also spread quickly in Mediterranean, it replaced the native plants, depriving the marine life of its food and habitat. Lucky for California, the killer algae problem was eradicated using toxic chemicals that cost huge amount of funds.
For epigenetics, epigenetics is a study regarding the heritable changes in our genes. It concentrates on how our lifestyle will change the way that our genes develop. Epigenetics also refers to the external modifications of our DNA through the lifestyle that we are living and we are practicing. All in all, epigenetics plays a huge part in the development of our gene expression through time. The lifestyle that we are practicing is the predictor whether our epigenetics will evolve positively or negatively. There are three types of epigenetic changes that are happening to our body. First is DNA methylation. DNA methylation. It works through adding a chemical group to our DNA. To be specific, this group is added to its specific places on our DNA to block the proteins that are attached to the DNA to read our genes. This group can be removed through the use of demethylation. Next is the histone modification. Histone modification is a process that the DNA wraps around on the proteins which are called histones. Genes that are wrapped in the histones are turned off, while the genes that are not wrapped in the histones are turned on. Lastly, non-coding RNA. Our DNA is used as an instruction in making coding RNA and non-coding RNA. Coding RNA is used to make proteins to support our DNA, while the non-coding RNA helps to control the gene expression by attaching to coding RNA, along with other certain proteins. Non-coding RNA also recruits proteins to modify histones to turn genes on and off.
The reason the water cycle is important is that it has an impact in our climate. Contributing to clean air during precipitation, it helps in the cooling of the temperature of Earth against greenhouse gases. And lastly, it affects all life processes on Earth as it is an important variable in the biogeochemical process, including us. The water in your glass may be the same water dinosaurs drank, but it's also the same water that's going to keep life on our planet in the years to come.